Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our monthly webinar. InfoFluency has been hosting a webinar, trying to every once a month for this year to show some of the products we've launched, to bring guests on, and just to bring greater awareness around data analytics and just bring interesting people on to have more conversation around what that looks like in a business setting. So we are excited that you're here. Buckle up because we have a good guest with us this month, sorry. But first I wanted to let us introduce ourselves. My name is Alyssa McGinn, and I am the Director of Growth for InfoFluency, which is just a fancy way to say I'm working in all ways to help a company grow in marketing and in sales. And with us, we also have the privilege of having our CEO, and I will let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, I'm excited about this episode. Really so grateful, Kyle, to you for being here, and excited about our conversation. So I founded InfoFluency and have been running this company for 15, 16 years now. And it's our mission and it's our joy to work with our clients every day. And our mission really is to equip the executives and the decision makers in our client companies to leverage their data in a way that really fuels their decision making, and it enables them to have the aha moment where they can understand aspects of their business through the data that they would not have otherwise known. And we have all kinds of cool success stories and interesting things that our clients have done with their data. And it's our mission to equip them as best we can to use that data that they've collected in their business and do growth and efficiency things with it. And so, yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and it's exciting today to talk with Kyle.
Yes, so we have Kyle with us this month, and I feel like wears a lot of hats in our lives. So a two-time client of InfoFluency, a friend, and an advisor to us now. And so I won't steal your thunder, Kyle. Let you introduce yourself and what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the episode. I'm excited to just share about our partnership together and just time in business together over the last number of years. Robin and I met a while back, and so it's fun to be here. I'm COO for Menlo and K-12 ITC, which is a Menlo company, and it's a IT services company for school districts around the country. And so I run operations and manage processes and systems and people and KPIs and the team's based here in Kansas City, and so excited to be a part of the team. And I've worked in a COO capacity for a couple other businesses that we've worked together with, and so it's fun to be here.
Yeah, so speaking of when you guys met, that's kind of where I want to start, is back when Kyle and Robin met each other. What was the year? Do you guys remember?
Oh, goodness. 2018, 19, somewhere around there. Does that sound about right, Robin?
I would say 18. That sounds right. Okay. Definitely pre-COVID.
Yep, pre-COVID.
Well, COVID.
Yeah, I had in a previous life basically lived for a while on a different side of the planet. And while I was living in India, I was having conversations with Robin about just what it looked like to outsource some different roles and things like that. And so we were both going to be in Oklahoma City at the same time one year, and we got together and we're just talking about what life was like living over in India and things like that. And in that conversation, I was like, so tell me what you do, Robin. Tell me what you're looking for, how you're trying to grow as a business. And Robin was describing what InfoFluency did. And I was like, I'm pretty sure the company I'm working with could use you right now. and so that was kind of the beginning of our story. And so I was working for a different company here in Kansas City at the time, and that was when we started working together for the first time.
And Kyle, what was your exposure to data analytics or data visualization at that point?
Yeah, at that point in time, I mean, I knew, the terms data analytics and things like that, but it was early in my business career, and so knew the importance of numbers and knowing your numbers and things like that. Most of my experience up until that point had been largely on Google Sheets or Excel sheets and things like that. Not really too familiar with a lot of data visualization tools and things like that. And so that was kind of where my exposure was at that time. I was having a lot of conversations in that company. I was in a leadership position in that company, but basically was asking for questions about the numbers, and I would ask questions to our team there at the time, and I would say, hey, I mean, how many customers did we have in the in the last year in 2018? And so the IT person at the time would kind of run off and for 15-20 minutes come back later, 30 minutes later, and pull up an Excel file on our big screen in the conference room, and it would be numbers from 2017, and I'd be like, no, like I asked for 2018, and so they would he would run off and go run another query, and he was running queries against the SQL server and things like that, and he'd come back with 2019's numbers, or just, and it would be or it would be 8 months instead of the full year, and or it'd be only the customers in Kansas as opposed to nationwide, and it was just a lot of back and forth on looking at the data, and it was just hard to actually look at the data. And I would ask the leader of the company at the time. I would ask him about numbers, and really a lot of the numbers that were oftentimes quoted, I would ask if they were factual or if they were numbers that were true at one time, and I just could never really get a full picture of what was really going on in the business at the time. And so as I was talking to Robin about this, and she's like, no, live looks at our data where you can manipulate the data, and as we were talking through some of that, I remember the first time we got it implemented, and this was probably one of the biggest like aha moments for us, Robin, that you referenced, the aha moments.
Yes.
But one of the biggest aha moments for us was we worked with InfoFluency to get our databases synced up and having some visualizations. And I think I had sketched out like on a piece of paper or something like that, like, okay, it'd be nice if I could see the customer here and see their orders by year, but then break it out. And, I had some ideas that would be nice. But the first time we got this customer list, I just wanted to know our top customers and be able to look at them by year, and look at the amounts and things like that, and be able to sort them by high to low. And we had about 30,000 customers. It was an e-commerce platform, and we had about that was the number that I had been told and things like that. And I was told that our average customer spend was between $500 and $1,000 a year for that customer, which I knew right away that number wasn't going to be fully accurate, because I knew the annual revenue we had, and it didn't match up with those numbers. So as we're looking at these numbers for the very first time, we had this aha moment inside of our company where this number one customer, while the average was significantly lower, if the average was somewhere between 500 and 1,000, this customer had spent $250,000 with us the year before. So we had this one super user in our system that literally in our system, it was first name, this company name, last name, the second half of this company's name. And didn't even fit in our system, like as far as how the data, we captured the data and things like that. But they were a major super user in the system. And I went to our sales department and was trying to find out if anybody knew this person and what the connection was. Did we really have a deep relationship with this person or not? And it turned out we didn't really have a deep relationship with this person. And so a week later, I was on a plane to fly out and meet with them. And they were in California. And so I flew out a plane. And over the next year and a half, we took that customer from $250,000 to 1.2 million. And they were seeing some significant growth as well, which is why they were super using our platform, and became a really important customer for our business. And so so that it's always funny when when people talk about the cost of, data analytics and things like that, the opportunity cost, like to not do it, that the lost opportunity that you have by not knowing your numbers in an extreme way like this, or to go off of last year's assumptions, or last year's facts that are this year's assumptions, right? If that's what you're doing, we had a client that we 5x'd, in a year and a half after knowing this information. But for whatever reason, we weren't getting that information from the queries we were running before. And so this, for me, that was probably the biggest aha moment of the importance of data analytics and understanding your numbers, the importance of data input and data accuracy and things like that. That really has helped multiple companies now that I've been a part of scaling. So that was our biggest aha moment by far, and that was within the first month of having it implemented. And I can give story after story of additional things that we learned from that as well. But that was the biggest aha moment for sure.
Kyle, I resonated with something you said where you were talking about that the whole company was operating on this assumption that the average spend was $500 to $1,000. And I see that over and over again. And honestly, I'm guilty of it on occasion myself, is that we get these numbers in our mind and we operate as if they continue to be true. Where the fact of the matter is the business is a changing environment all the time. So we believed was true and was true in the past. It's not necessarily true now, but yet we as leaders continue to make decisions on the things that used to be true.
Right.
And talk about opportunity cost or, missteps, can really do some damage.
Well, if you're not up to date on those, I mean, you're making decisions on trends that at one time were true, to your point, but you're making decisions based on old data and old information. And that may, you may be okay with that for a while, but you may be totally missing it also. And it's just a gamble. You might be,
right.
So it's a, you're making decisions and I, a phrase that would get shared with me, and I was young in my career. And so I'd hear this phrase a lot. But it was the vapors of experience is what I was told. And, and there's probably some wisdom to that, not totally knocking that phrase entirely. But I've also noticed that over time, if people say that long enough, what that oftentimes means is actually you don't know, so you don't know the facts of the situation right now. So you're operating off of the vapors of experience, and you're better off operating off of fact as opposed to operating off of experientially what has been true before, because it might not be true right now. And so it's true that allows you to make educated guesses, but you're better off not making an educated guess. You're better off making a decision based on true data and facts that are true today. And ultimately, if you have to wait weeks to get reports, or if you have to wait hours, I mean, it's just better to not even have to wait hours. It's better, the rate of change that everything is going at today, one day makes a difference. That we're talking a lot about in our company right now, just the sense of urgency that we need to have in everything that we do. And it's not haste. We don't want to be hasty where you're making decisions without really looking at the implications or the downline effects of it. That's hasty, but urgency is, we got to have this information now. And it can't be something we're running manually every single time because it's not fast enough. And, and so that, I think that for me over time, I've seen some of those situations that it sounds there's half truths to it that are okay, that there is wisdom, and certainly over time, I have plenty to learn in every business I go into, but there's also the reality that facts are better than vapors.
Another thing you said, Kyle, that kind of sparked a thought is I've heard the expression data at the speed of questions. And
Ooh, I like that.
Oh,
yeah, and it's not my
that
phrase,
should go on our website.
right?
Data at the speed of
I
questions. I
did, I
like
did,
that.
I did borrow it, and I don't even know who the source is, but the point is that if we, with an analytics application, can empower the user, the decision maker, or the question asker to
Yeah.
have self-service answers.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about, going out to the guy who runs the query and waiting, even if it's an hour or half an hour for the answer, you're on to the next question by the time you get the
Yeah.
inaccurate answer to the one before. So if we can
Yeah.
equip our clients with something that they can interact with, they can ask the questions and get those
Right.
answers in real time and be on to the next question, 2 minutes later. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And to that point,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was going to say, to that point, it's not just, there's a downline effect of that too. It's not just at the executive level. They have their own set of questions. You start working your way down the chain of command, and, maybe the sales, person has a question, and they're then asking up, and they have, the executive has their own set of questions they're trying to get answered. And so
Yeah.
you really talk about a slowdown of, with lack of data accessibility.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And one question tends to lead to another question, right?
Yes.
And and so that's where you've got if you have to keep taking every question to run through a process, it's just too slow. It's just and it the speed, the rate of being able to make decisions. And for me, honestly, like, as the bigger companies that I get to be working for too, and bigger, more responsibilities and things like that, you don't have the time to keep following up with all those things either. So,
right.
and people get distracted, and if you ask for something, then to have to follow up and track it to completion. And and by the time I get the data, sometimes I forget why I even asked for that data, because
Yes.
to your point, I've moved on to something else at that time. And it's not a shiny object syndrome as much as it's just it was needed and necessary at the moment. And do we have it? Oh no, we don't have it. I got to ask for it. Well, then, we're going to make a decision to move on without having it. And, and so, so I think the data at the speed of decisions, the rate of decision, speed of decisions,
Or
speed of questions.
Speed of questions. Yeah.
Speed of
Both,
questions.
really, yeah.
For decisions. Yeah.
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 So could I circle back to something that you were saying about, basically it's an ROI question, but a lot of times folks feel concerned about the spend to actually leverage their data well.
Yeah.
And they view maybe that's a solution that only the enterprise can on. What's your thought about ROI, and what have you seen in your experience?
Yeah, so the first time we implemented this, back in 2018 together, the first time we implemented this at that company, it was a small business. And that was one of the big concerns right off the bat when I brought up, after meeting with you, I brought up this idea. One of the concerns was the expense. And it was assumed to be something that was very expensive. And would have been a nice to have, but not a need to have. And honestly, the assumption was just wrong. It wasn't very expensive. And when we started talking about a quote of building it out and a monthly price and things like that, it actually wasn't expensive. And so for us, that was actually something that we were just kind of wrong on. And had kind of at one time, again, it was one of those pieces of information that at one time that was true. And a lot of these data visualization tools like Tableau and Power BI and things like that used to be more expensive. They used to be more enterprise only solutions. And really over the last 10 years have really changed to being a tool for every business. And at a price point that every business can handle. So it's and you used to have to really have someone internally that was more of a data analytics developer position, engineer, that really had to build these things out. there weren't a lot of companies that were, helping small businesses build out solutions like this as well. And so it really was an enterprise cost, and cost prohibitive for a lot of small businesses. It's not true today. And so if somebody is hearing that or believing that, it's just not a fact today.
It
And so
sounds like it was pennies on the ROI of 5x in your biggest client.
Well, I mean, if you let's just say a profit margin of, every company healthy profit margin 20 to 30%, right? Let's just do the numbers on that. It was pennies on the dollar cost to the profit margin of what came from that one customer alone, right?
What a win.
So, and again, I mean, that wasn't the only customer that was impacted by it. I'd be at conventions looking up sales and things like that, not needing to log into our system because I could look at the data, and find out what this person orders, what they don't order based on meeting them at a convention and getting their names, right? So some of those type of things. You look
like such a rock star because you like appear to know off the top of your head what their product mix is.
Right. Yeah. So it was wild because, you could look at those things and you just had information, and it wasn't because we were super smooth across all of our technology. We just had more access to our data in a user-friendly way. So the cost was very it wasn't as what was believed at the time to be really expensive. It just wasn't true.
Love it. So I want to move along the timeline of your career. We're basically going to walk through your career path, Kyle.
Perfect.
So you just mentioned the use case from the first company that you were with, and then the second company that you're with, I think, has a very different use case, but also, just as interesting. So I'd love to have you walk us through kind of the problem, the pain points that you were feeling with the second company, and how the implementation ended up helping you guys there.
We so the first company that I was at was much more of a analytics and much more looking at the data and looking at order history and things like that, and so it was much more just truly more analytics. The second one, it was actually more of a solution that was a reporting solution that was for our sales teams, and so we had a fairly complex sales commission structure that was being done across our sales reps for each month for their commissions. And it was fairly complex. It had a lot of different dependencies and things like that in it. We were doing it by hand in an Excel file, and we were having a lot of errors. So 3 of us were jumping in to proof that and double check that and triple check that on a monthly basis. And it was taking a pretty solid, I'm going to say 3 to 5 days for 3 people every month.
Wow.
And so it was a complicated process. We were trying to reduce the process complexity, but in getting it to a point where we knew, it was where it was wanted to be. And so we were looking for a solution that, and I was discussing with Robin the possibility of a solution that we could pull into Tableau and really feed multiple different data sets in and have it crunch the data sets into one visualization for each sales rep, so that they could view the reps that were underneath their sales reps. And it was different levels of hierarchies of VPs and associate vice presidents and then reps underneath them that they were all managing, and had different conditions for each level and things like that based on their structure. So it was a very complex reporting commission structure every month that we gave access to all of our vice presidents to be able to look at how they were getting paid, what they were getting paid. And so I think that there's a lot of sales teams out there that don't feel like they know why they're getting paid the commission they're getting paid. Not that they haven't been told those things in a contract, but really truthfully, when it comes down to payments that have been received by the company and then payments that have paid out to the commission and based on different structures. So we had a really complicated structure for that. And that was the solution that we built inside of Tableau. And rather than 3 to 5 days, we could have the data feeding in, and we basically could send the data off to InfoFluency, and within a day have the data sitting inside of Tableau for us to view the commission structures for each one of those people. And so it was that was the solution that we were using at InfoFluency at the time. And so, yeah, so that was a very different use case. And because it was much more reporting as opposed to analytics based on sales and things like that, and marketing and things like that. So, yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, like looking back, like other opportunities there would have been inside that company for analytics purposes?
Yeah, so we we had just, before I left, we had just started using it. We just started going over to more the analytics side. And so that was actually the first time we'd ever really started tracking a couple of different things for the first time. One of them was we didn't have the structure that our business was set up. We didn't have consistent income every month from every customer. And so, and it wasn't, that wasn't the way that we were set up from a revenue standpoint. And so, so part of that model then was on the commission side, we would notice that maybe commissions were low to different sales reps, but we weren't really tracking revenue per customer and revenue per customer per month and paying attention to that on a deep level. And we didn't really have any visualization for that outside of really pulling up customer report inside of QuickBooks or something like that. We weren't really tracking any of those things on a per customer per month in any way that could be sorted by total revenue or anything like that over time or over a certain amount of months or anything like that. And so, so we had just started building out some different data visualizations for how many months different customers had paid in, had made payments. So in the last 12 months, sort by, they've paid us 6 months out of those 12 months. So they've had a payment within, 6 times. Or we've also were able to sort based on people who had 0 to 1 month and 0 to 3 months that they had ever paid us. And what we had been able to start doing as a result of that was we also started looking at, okay, we've got a number of customers that have been with us for 12 months that haven't paid us more than 2 times. Some that hadn't even paid us once over 12 months. And so we were doing a lot of work for some of those customers, but either they weren't paying us from a honesty perspective or they weren't paying us from a revenue on their side perspective. But regardless, it was able to highlight some holes that we had from an operations standpoint that we were then able to act on. And it was interesting. We went to a number of those customers and they're like, oh, hold on a second. It turns out that was just a mistake on our side. And maybe it was, or maybe it wasn't, hard to say, but, we did get some payments as a result of that and retained some customers. And we also parted ways with some customers that probably truthfully were just kind of taking advantage of us as a business. And so, so there's it was able for us to really top grade as well for our customer base and helped us identify just some holes that we had in receivables and things like that as well. So so things that we didn't even know about existed. Again, when you're receiving 12 months of revenue for a customer that hasn't paid you and you didn't know it, and there's a little bit of a when you start talking about the cost, but when you start talking about the revenue that comes in, that at that point is just straight profit. It's that's a because there's some costs already, whether you get the revenue or not. So so I would have loved to have seen us go more in that direction. And maybe they have gone more that direction after I left. I don't 100% know. So but that was fun to start seeing some of those analytics start coming in. I would have loved to have seen more analytics by state as well, and some of those type of demographics as we were expanding nationally. I would have loved to have gotten into more cost analysis for each one of those customers as well, and done more of a cost and profitability analysis across those customer bases. It's pretty easy when you have no revenue coming in to do this isn't, a good customer for us. But if you have, I would have enjoyed getting more into those numbers as well, and analyzing that. So yeah, but that was kind of where we ended at.
That's also like another, in a different way, last year's facts or this year's assumptions, because they sign up and maybe they make a payment, and somewhere along the way someone's operating off of the fact that once was,
Yeah.
and that then quickly becomes an assumption, and that's a quick loss of revenue. So
yeah, and we had seen some really fast growth as a business, and so I think sometimes when you see really fast growth, data analytics, and knowing your data and things like that probably becomes even more important, because you really are functioning almost a little bit with your hair on fire. And when you start seeing growth like that, and you're hiring a lot, and you're staffing a lot, and you're putting out new fires, and you've scaled, so you have now new and bigger fires as well.
Yeah.
And so you can tend to just focus on what you knew to be true back then, which is very different than what's true today. And so numbers become really important on that. And I think we were beginning to look at a new set of data with new questions that we didn't have even a year and a half, 2 years prior at the business. And so I think that was also just we were kind of hitting a new chapter to asking new questions and things like that.
Well,
with new problems.
It sounds to me like the data could have been used in a fast growing business almost as a guardrail to that business not going off the tracks, because as much as slow growth can kill a business, growth that's fast and kind of unconstrained by the leadership can be really as risky, maybe even more so. And the data.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what that, that dashboard, when we were looking at who hasn't really made a payment for us, for the last few months, that's really what that kind of dashboard was meant to be doing. And I believe it is what it was used for, and current decisions, are even being made that way because of that. Because we did, to your point, we had a number of customers that, as a part of that fast growth, for whatever reason, either they maybe should have been customers we took on in the first place, or the market changed, or it could be a whole bunch of different reasons, but for whatever reason, we've spent money on them, and we're continuing to spend money every month on them, and we're not getting, it's costing the company money to keep them as a customer. And while that may be okay at times for someone, if you believe in their growth, a lot of times that also is, to your point, is something that's killing profitability for the business.
Sure.
And so those are, certainly, in a fast growth season like that, is not the time to ignore data and ignore numbers, in this way, for sure.
Yeah. I want to wrap us up with just a final charge, Kyle, to you, or from you to anyone else in your position or other executive positions. What would you say for the executive who's not currently looking at analytics or considering implementing analytics? What are some different ways that you touched on a few ways that it's been valuable to you in different settings, but I just love to hear kind of your final charge based on your experience.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, for me, I think we've got, a lot of companies that, even just to that question, it's interesting, but I think for a lot of CEOs that I talk to, and I think a lot of business leaders that, if you ask them the question, do they know their numbers? They're going to say yes. And they know some numbers. And they might be using numbers, out of QuickBooks, or they might have, some query that's been ran or something like that. But I think that for me, what I've seen over the years is that you don't, if that's all you have, it's like having, it's like having a dashboard in front of you in your car, and all you have is the oil gauge. And your windshield's fogging over, but you got the oil gauge, and or let's say speedometer, right? Let's not even say, like, oil's important, obviously, and like that's important. But let's say you've got the speedometer, like, how fast you're going, and you can throttle up and down, on how fast you're going, but the whole windshield is fogged over. And it's like you're kind of using your hand, like scraping the steam off the front windshield. And maybe this is a Kansas analogy, I don't know. Do you fog over very often in Texas,
Oh.
Robin? I don't know.
Yes.
But maybe this is a Kansas analogy, but you've got a defogger, as well. And but the only, dial you've got, that you're looking at is your speedometer. It's just, you're flying blind, and you don't really know what's going on in your whole company. You might know what's going on in your revenue numbers, or revenue per customer, even, because you can do some basic reports out of, QuickBooks and stuff like that. But it's not, Robin, back to circle full back to your quote. It's not data at the speed of questions. It is, it is a small visibility of your company. So for me, I mean, even when I go into a new position, it's one of the first things I'm, even working on at Menlo here, K-12, is looking at, our data across different divisions, and giving that data even to other divisions, to your point, Alyssa, of making them be able to act and make decisions based on data that they're getting even across departments. And so, that's data at the speed of questions, that a question in the sales department can get answered by data being provided in customer success. And now all of a sudden you have a whole different conversation. None of that was even financially driven. It's all data driven, based off of appointments and appointment settings, and what data you're even capturing, so that it answers questions that other people in different parts of the company, have. So this data analytics is so much more than just customer data, based off of a one-time sale. It's truly looking at questions and actions you need taken in the company to tell the health of a company. The CEO and I here, we talk about, if Brad's on a beach in Florida, how do I make sure he can look at one scorecard, one scoreboard, and truthfully, like a scoreboard in a football game, know the analysis of the game, of what's going on right now in the game.
Yes.
And if it's more complicated than that scoreboard, then it's too complicated at the CEO level. But to get that scoreboard simple there means there's data input and data decisions, and a whole set of data, in other places that are happening, data capturing even, and things like that. But to get all of those to roll up to that scoreboard, it requires a tool that's automated, that's not manual. And I just have yet to be in a situation where I've regretted working on data and data visualization like this. And I've, from a cost standpoint, from a business solution standpoint, every place I've implemented it, it's proved the value. From a profit standpoint, even and revenue standpoint, it's proved it every time. So for me, this is, having a little bit of data maybe is worse than having no data, because you don't think you need it all the time. And so it's having that one dial on the dashboard, as opposed to having, the full picture of your business. And that's what I feel like I've seen people operating on last year's facts, as opposed to being able to make proactive decisions to scale a business. And I think if you want to, see a business grow, and see departments being able to work together in a healthier way, and your customers better served, this is not a nice to have, it's a must have. And anybody that has any questions on this or disagrees, feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect, because I'd love to hear where you're coming from. But I would say driving with a fogged over windshield is, using your fist to wipe off a small 2x2 inch window is it's gotten me from A to B before, but it certainly is not the safest way to drive. So
that's for sure. I feel like, part of what I hear you saying is that don't wait to get started. There's always a way to start. And I think that on our mission to debunk the myth that analytics is not just an enterprise grade solution, it is not only, the price tag doesn't match that. It doesn't have to. On our mission to debunk that, part of what we say is there's always a bite-sized way to get started. There's always something that you can do to take a step towards being a data-driven company. And it's not something that, has to be, done all in 1 month. We try to offer ways that people can do that gradually, that we can get started to ultimately, the analytics is the cherry on top of the cake. There's a lot of other factors that go into having good analytics. And so I think, part of what I hear and what I want to communicate to anyone tuning in is, there's always a place to start, and you're not too small or too unconnected or too data unclean to get started. And so, we really, InfoFluency is part of our mission that we didn't mention is to serve this mid-market company, is to make analytics accessible, data accessible to companies that are, not the Amazons of the world. And so we would love to connect with anyone who has heard this and this resonates and this hits pain points in your business and your company. We'd love to connect. Or if you want to talk more to Kyle, we will put his email address in the information. We'd love to send him out as our promo guy.
Our
Any
ambassador.
additional?
Our
ambassador.
The ambassador. There you go.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a title, but I'm gonna take it.
Well,
I've recommended you guys you both to a number of people, and I think that the need for small businesses is huge in this area, and I think that the myth has been needs to be debunked that it's unattainable or unreachable. And to your point that the data is too dirty, or the data is not clean enough or anything like that, and so I think people don't realize how much they actually have and what they could do with that data if they had it.
We sure appreciate your ambassadorship and your
that's right.
Your sharing of your stories, and love that you've been such an example of success in these ways. And thanks so much for sharing and for giving us your time. Really
Hey, you bet. Thanks for building an awesome company. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle.
See y'all.